Sorry, I tend to do that. I tend to go into one.
We're all good. We're recording now. A huge welcome to Noki. Thank you for joining us. Can you please put your cameras on? It's so awful talking just to the letter D and the letter G. Please put your cameras on so Noki can see you and have at least some kind of, like, there is some human form there, please. I really need you to do that. And hopefully you've all written your word on the back of your hand. And welcome, Noki, for joining us. And I mean, just talk to us, tell us about you, and then the students will interact with you. I know they will. Please put your cameras on, guys.
Hello, everybody. Noki, aka Dr. Noki here. Thank you very much, George, for reaching out, and thank you very much for bringing me in. Big up to your head tutor here for being there for you as students during lockdown. Please see lockdown as a special moment in your life, not as a negative place. It's never, ever happened to any student ever in the entire world that you've been given this crazy moment, lockdown, under such extreme pressure to create something for the future. If we unlock and the pandemic doesn't rise its ugly head again, please see your lockdown as a positive place in time, because you're being put under extreme. The one thing you're being trained to do is design something, and designers are best put under extreme pressure, because then that is what polarizes the mind to create something for the future, to correct that pressure, to take the pressure off life, to make life better for the people that they are designing for. So please see your lockdown as something positive. Do not get negative about it. Don't have negative thoughts about it. Please just try and understand. And I come from a place where, way back in the 90s, I moved to Shoreditch, 95, where there was nothing there at all. And it was kind of pressureless because there was nothing. There was just warehouses for about 30 people maybe living there. The YBAs were there doing their art. Lee was doing his fashion. There was a club called the Blue Note that started Metalheads and Talbin Sings music, Mo Wax, and there was a pub called the Bricklayers Arms, and there was nothing open during the weekend. And I started that pub at the weekend with Mr. High Priestess Fee Duran. And she's a special lady in my life because we were under that pressure. We had everything in our hand, and we had such a laugh the first year, I suppose. Then it got super, super busy. It was like the opposite of lockdown. Everybody came to our pub. Everybody was everybody. And it wasn't an easy place to get to back then. It was a very dangerous place to get back then. A lot of people would get to Old Street, and as we know, Old Street has got 5 exits and people would get lost. They would end up walking back down the city, because they'd gone the wrong way. They couldn't find the bricklayer. So it was a destination if you got there. And when you did, it was insane fun. It was unregulated. We just had fun, but it became too busy. It became too popular. It became too hardcore, because the hardcore were turning up. So when hardcore turn up, they get hardcore, and they get dominant. They bring their own dealers with them. That becomes a problem. So I experienced the rave become a toxic lockdown inside that pub. And I think that was my overload. But I have to say to you, the positivity of that was the mashup, and I'm known as the mashup artist, and that was because mashup was happening in that pub. It was polarized into a small pub, and everybody fitted in, and it was hot, sweaty, and mashup. And Fee DJ'd, and she was one of the early kind of like pioneers of Electroclash, because she was playing David Bowie mixed in with Blondie, mixed in with Run DMC. I would demand more hip hop from her, and she'd have to go secondhand shopping and find more stuff. So she was flipping around the radio station, killing a radio star. She was on it, and it just reflected the kind of eclectic kind of, well, they call it shabby chic now, don't they? Do you know what I mean? It's like a secondhand mashup. We had Brick Lane. Fee was one of the best stylists going. She was like very ahead of her style, very androgy. She'd have a laugh about it, saying, she's even quite as well, transgender, and she was beautiful, tall, elegant, but no messing. You messed with her, you were taking your life, in your own hands, or she was your best friend or your worst enemy, that kind of character. And we bonded on that kind of thing. We took no messing about, because it was difficult running that place, and we had our fun. As I say, I personally saw a lot of toxicity running that place, because you're dealing with alcohol and drinking drugs and rave and after parties. We're talking about the warehouses afterwards. The only way to get rid of people was somebody to open up a warehouse and have an after party, and get them the hell out, so we could strip the bar, fill it again, and then reopen the next mashup. And it was literally a conveyor belt of that, and it got a nightmare towards. Well, I moved on to glass collecting because, and I know, as a famous restaurateur called David Warrington and Pablo Flack, they took it on board out of to the next level of creativity, and it was very it was good fun. But for me personally, it was a bit like being in lockdown. It was a pressure. It was too much. I felt responsible. I felt isolated. I felt addicted. Everything's gone blank. Everything okay? Everybody hear me?
All good. All good. Keep going.
Okay.
Good.
Okay. And so I think how I dealt with it, like I'm asking you to deal with your lockdown, is I just found a happy space by mashing up the thing I kept seeing all the time, which was branding. Everybody was turning up and they're branded this or branded that, because it was all vintage back then. So everybody was turning up in the vintage, Gucci, the vintage this, vintage that, and the secondhand Adidas, find the secondhand, Fila, Adidas. So I just started chopping up my own personal branded T-shirts, and that's how I started as a way of therapy. It was a bit like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and I just found myself doing my thing with the thing I knew best. And I kind of, every time I wanted to go back to the pub, I kind of wanted to go back wearing something that was not available. So, I would mash up Nike, Adidas, and Fila together, and people go, "Whoa, where did that thing come from?" And I would just start memeing it around as a Noki. And, Adidas with a bit of gaffer tape became AIDS, because I wanted to created a humane billboard. And that was, so it was a safe sex campaign in the rave rather than an Adidas campaign. Reebok became Queer OK. That was very much about me expressing my sexuality. As Fee will say, she was you're not your usual gay. So I was always very kind of like, but I am. So I would wear my T-shirt proclaiming that I was, or I would take Stussy, turn that into Sissy, and do the same. So it was a way of redirectionalizing this body billboard that we all walk about for the corporate company, for my own personal endeavor, for my own personal explanation, because the only explanation that we walk about wearing these corporate brands is the back pocket of a businessman now. This is 25 years later, and we're very aware now with fast fashion and overconsumption and factories collapsing and slave labor and degradation of Mother Earth's facilities to grow and produce water, earth, that kind of stuff. We're all aware of what comes from consumerism. I felt very part of that. I am a big consumer. I love the shopping. I love the hunter gathering. It's very powerful inside me. I get a buzz out of presenting what I've created and got. But this way I was able to make something fresh and new, something the designers of those companies couldn't do. They cannot create a Nike, Adidas, and Fila tracksuit, but I can, you can. So the custom build to me is my revolt in the 21st century to you, to try and say to you that everything's been designed, nothing's very fresh. So let's kill design, let's by cutting it up and re-augmenting its pattern pieces into each other to create something that those brands that we're so addicted to can't give us. For me, the custom build is a sustainable revolt. It allows you to engage in fashion, branding, the rave, and get positive toxicity out of it. You landfill drop, not landfill up, which turns it on its head about the drops, which is a modern trend-based addiction. And it's a 21st century freedom uniform. It's at the moment, I can see the trend is 90s. Well, it's weird because I grew up in the 90s and I started mashing things up in the 90s because I felt like the 90s look was boring, and it had got to its boring level of boring. And, I'd see people turning up at the bricklayers trying to look like they were ravers, and they ain't been raving. They ain't done no raving. Do you know what I mean? They're just part of a conveyor belt. So it was, as I say, it was like starting to see things become commercial. And the one thing as a fashion designer is you avoid the commercial and create the future. And you'll never create the future if you're following off the commercial. So that was my way of not being part of that commercial moment in the pub, because I was walking about with an Adidas t-shirt saying AIDS. I was walking about with mashup tracksuit tops and bits, and to a point I can even turn around and say there's photographs of me which popped up and I started wearing just a white t-shirt, and that was my way of just getting out of being into branding. I'd forgotten I'd even done that, because I think I was even so hacked off with it that I just started wearing a white t-shirt in the front, and everybody's like, "Where's all your rave gear?" And I'd be like, "Not wearing it today." No, it was like people associated me with branded product, and it became a very awareness of being taken over, being removed from my own self and being put into a place of modeling, in a sense, modeling something else, becoming a muse for a bigger entity that I wasn't prepared to be. And if I was, then it was going to take it to my own level. So I'm here to talk about, the futurism of the custom build, to customize, to create street couture, which is what I call it. And that came 10, 15 years later when I started Dr. Noki's NHS at the Fashion East platform for Noble Kennedy. Because she was actually asked me, could I do it, because she wanted to take it back to the East End. She started it out 3 years beforehand. I wasn't very sure. I'd been doing my art and my installations, and did I want to really enter the fashion industry? And I thought, well, why not? It's been good to me, being a kind of an outsider graffiti artist with my Noki tag. I was always in awe of the guys that did the metal and did the yards and the big pieces and the throw-ups. I did my silly versions of it. I was always known as the fag tagger. That was fine. I understood, because it's a very heterosexual kind of misogynist world, the graffiti scene. And I just thought, well, maybe I see people wearing brands as human trains. So I started tagging the brand, because humans went beyond the station into the postcode, into the clubs, the bars, into the debating chambers, into the in front of the judges, into bedrooms. It went deeper into the postcode, into the suburbs. So I thought, well, if I do my tag on the brand, which everybody's wearing, I think I was creating a fresh, contemporary version of what I had grown up seeing coming from America, in the style bags and the books that were being presented at the time. And it's Star Wars, those books. So it's to do something different, you really have to believe that what you're thinking is different. And you'll probably find yourself being surrounded by people that are negative to you, not understanding what you're thinking, you not even having an ability to explain it, the words to understand it. This is not a bad place. This is a good place, because if it's misunderstood, then it's got many years probably to be understood. And those many years will be your place to evolve, understand yourself, what you're trying to do. One thing I'm really understanding is when you do projects now, these unlock projects that you're doing for your university, don't abandon them, look back at them, evolve them into other projects, reference them. Say you did this bit, but you want to incorporate it into this new project. Be sustainable, sustain your own ideas, push them forward into other projects. Don't just abandon and run. You know, this is why we're in the state we're in with fashion, because it just dumps and trendifies another look. Therefore, it buys more of a different, same fabric but in a different color, and chalks that idea out of it. And we're now under what's called fast fashion. And I'd rather call it fast clothing, because they're not really part of the fashion industry. They're just chopping up secondhand and other designers' ideas and making it in cheap textiles and selling it off for, you know, the money that we can afford, which is fine, but it's not fashion as such. It's more, I'd say, more fast clothing. The fashion industry needs to respect itself more. It needs to distance itself from, and even as students understand that this is not a good side of fashion. This is a toxic, destructive, negative side of fashion. And even though if you look back at fashion, it may have its elitism, it may have its problems within its ability to promote certain aspects of aspiration. It surrounded the body with very interesting ideas and allowed what we usually call the freaks of nature, the unknown characters that aren't generic, walk and parade, which is what we have as a catwalk, and explain by the movement of the human body these ideas, to encapsulate their imaginations. And later into the 20th century, the brand and branding became the thing. So, you know, now we're living in the world where you can stick Chanel Seasons on a dog shit and people would buy it. As long as it's packaged and it's sent to you by a special DHL courier. So it's, you know, these things are the world that you're living in. And these are the things that I suppose I'm trying to say to you when you're in lockdown. Be aware of, look at them, come out of lockdown having been aware. Because I've stared at so many Nike Air t-shirts and trainer boxes that I came up with a saying, which was, when you're aware, you can repair. When you're unaware, you live in despair. So it's kind of a mantra to myself, and you know, I'm having to stare at the thing that I'm trying to augment and try and do something different for the future. And I see ideas of the custom build being taken into a pattern cutting format and sold as generic small, medium, and large in JD Sports, and that can be quite disheartening. But at the same time, I'm like, no, rejection breeds reinvention. Keep positive, Noki. 1% of anybody knowing anything is better than no percent. And if somebody discovers Noki and sees a connection and they decide, oh, I could make my own and I can customize it and do my own version, you know, 1% is better than no percent. So, you know, and I try and custom build and reboot the future one t-shirt at a time. Any questions?
Come on,
Hello.
guys. Yeah, no, we're all here, Noki, don't worry. Some questions, guys? Louisa Wilkie, go and ask it yourself, my love.
Thank you. Being Brighton based, do you feel like your environment and area kind of is a source of inspiration to you?
Thank you for your question. I love Brighton. It's a bit like living in San Francisco of America. After living in London, which was like New York, and I come from a small village called Ellen, and I used to stick an H in front of that and call it Hell on Earth. And it was just refreshing to be down by the seaside. I come from the seaside, and being only an hour away from London. So Brighton, I moved down with a partner we met many years ago, back in '93 from university days, when I went to Edinburgh Art School. And I couldn't believe I could have a picnic and not have to sit in a car. That was one of the weird things I loved about being in Brighton. But yes, Brighton is a queer city. It's by the sea, so the wind comes in and freshens it up, so the air is very fresh. It has a great university. The students show out and do their thing. Yeah, Brighton is definitely, it was a savior to me. As I say, my ex was like down here, and I used to do the mashup, as I told you before, in Shoreditch, but I'd get on the train and I'd come down to Brighton and I'd recover and I'd go back up. So it's always been a bit like a Betty Ford clinic for me. Yes, I would say it's been it's been a place of sanctitude, and I even started I did a V&A installation from recycling textiles from a local recycling plant called Magpie. So it's even fed me artistically, let alone healthily. So I did a show at the V&A called Consume This, and I basically put on a festival of ideas using Brighton-based rag that was coming into the recycling plant, and I would build my custom builds, and I put them on my Nokiettes, and they basically wandered round in front of a big audience in the V&A lecture theatre where Charles Darwin did his relativity. Have I got that right? His evolutionary ideas, and it felt good. It felt good that what was going on in that installation all came from Brighton-based rag. It was over the time I was there, it felt very circular. It came in, I created, I presented, and I felt like I was doing something pure, futuristic, and modernist. I felt like I was reinterpreting Dadaism a little bit. It was an art movement that I have always been very in love with, but very confused by. So if I would suggest to any of you guys to check out the art movement of Dadaism. They basically invented collage and sculpture by assemblage. So they would assemble the everyday object and then create installations around it. So it's super modern art. It then went on to be quite sidelined by painting again, taking the word ism out of it. But that movement, Dadaism, is very much what Noki's DNA is definitely rooted in, because I decided the ABC, out of all the brands, so the words that come from all the brands we're fixated and addicted to, I chop them up. So I call that cut the brand to create the new power alphabet. So I'll chop up all the different brands to get all the A's, the B's, the C's, the D's, and I'll create new words from them, which is why, guys, I've asked you to write words on your hands, because being a dyslexic, I was very scared of words because they scared me, because every time I tried to say anything using them, I would get them wrong and be chastised and put in the corner of the classroom with the dunce cap on back in Scotland. That's how they dealt with kids of the dyslexic or the remedial. We used to call them remedial kids, and I was one of those kids. So I've experienced sitting in the corner of a room with a dunce cap on shamed by the school teacher. But I felt it was just great because I got out of doing the class, so I was quite relieved. So I think somewhere along the line, I've always seen adversity as quite a kind of interesting place for problem solving, which brings me back to what I'm trying to say to you guys. Be positive about your lockdown. Don't be so negative about it, because it's just a special moment. It's extreme, yes, but designers always come out of adversity with a big light bulb above their head. And that light bulb will carry you through to be the next big famous person that's worth being famous. And I'm sure some of you all think, why on earth is he wearing this mask? What's it all about? Well, I've never wanted to join the celebrity game. I like my anonymity. I call them sob masks, so it's a suffocation of branding. So I'm kind of declaring to you that I like to not be known, and that I don't want you to be fixated about what I look like. I don't want to be a Kardashian, because obviously we're now 25 years later, that's what it's all about. It's about a visual aspect of the human body that we all become and try and emulate. So if I'm going to try and say emulate me, I'm going to say, like, grab a t-shirt, stick it over your head, cut some eyes out of it, and wear a mask, you know. So try that. And now the mask is huge, because obviously we've now pandemic. So this ain't so scary anymore. Do you know what I mean? It's just who I am and how I want to be, so that I can feel free in society. Anonymity is I would say is the new commodity. Especially now with modern tech, everybody's giving them anonymity up as soon as they're given an iPhone by their parents. So what's that about? But that's something that a generation has to work out for itself. And it's something I worked out for myself 25 years ago. So yeah, the mask is a kind of fun, but serious as well. There's a serious side to it, but as you can see, you know, there's a fun side to it, and it, you know, it kind of becomes quite interesting to play ideas with, and just have fun by it. I am looking through the thing that you are in shops buying and fixating over. So I'm saying, and most of you are going, oh, what the hell? Oh, that's a bit Slipknot, mad, what's that? So you're kind of your reaction to my mask of the thing that you would normally buy as a consumer is the opposite here. You're having to go, oh, you're pulling back rather than running forward. And that's a physical reaction I want to try and subvert within consumerism, because every t-shirt I make the mask from was once part of a consumerist run to pay for, to wear to the club, to then chuck away. So I'm taking that chuck away and doing this to reflect that's what I do. We possibly could, you know, you guys are doing. So therefore it's an artistic statement to try and rewind certain aspects of the consumerist human so that we can reflect on it. And as an artist, I can collage from it, and then I can do these lectures with you guys to try and make you understand that there is positivity in the landfill. It's not a negative place. It doesn't have to be feared. It's full of commodity. It's full of amazing things that if you just concentrate and look in and stop seeing them as vintage finds, you can chop up that sleeve, you can chop up that zip front, you can chop up that hemline, you can chop up and put all those bits together. You can take, if you took 5 tracksuit, just 5 tracksuit tops, remove the sleeves, just remove the sleeves, and then re-put them onto each one, you have then got a mashup of various brands that they can't make that tracksuit look like, because they are caught in their own dilemma of copyright, which they've created through locking down the brand as a singular unit to be sold in the unit form of small, medium, and large under their celebrity endorsement. And it's a way of breaking that pattern, that freedom, that creating your own freedom uniform, so that when you are in the club or you are in the bar, you're not advertising something you can go and buy. You're advertising freedom. You're advertising that you could make this for them, or they could be inspired to go and cut up their own version and do it for them, and turn up at the pub the next day and go, haha, look what I've done. And it's not competition to be better than, it's like it's joining in as an altruistic youth movement. So these are things that I want to express, and why I enjoy doing these things, what these formats, and I'm quite enjoying doing them. Maybe I'm really enjoying the lockdown in a sense because I'm now doing them through Zoom. I'm now weirdly engaged with you in some kind of TV moment as a character with a mask on. You know, beforehand it was just a static visual in a magazine. Now it's a bit more animated and engaging, and I'm really enjoying it, and I hope I'm making sense to you guys, you know what I mean, to try and perk you up, because I do think there's a positivity in the lockdown. Next question.
Do you think, Jessica, do you think that fast fashion culture will ever die out? Oh,
No.
Question.
No, I don't think it will. I think it feeds a certain consumer that's gone beyond the pale, but I do think it will create a reason for the underground fashion moment to happen again, where it's not acceptable, where it's not cool, it's not all right, and I do think it's fine on certain levels, because I have chopped up fast fashion, fast clothing, let's call it that. I've chopped up fast clothing and put it into my work, and it's great. I mean, it's so I'm not going to be totally down on it. I'm just saying it's fast clothing. It's not fast fashion. The fashion world needs to be more proud of itself, of what it's created in the 20th century, because it's not just about branding. It's some amazing shapes and forms and ideas and tribes, and fashion, as I say, fashion tribes have come out of it in club scenes, and it's just that we're stuck in a kind of conveyor belt of retroism at the moment. And I think fast fashion's come out of that because we've become addicted to fashion. But as I say, I think it's a clothing industry, not a fashion industry.
Louisa, another question from you.
Oh yeah. My question was, again, also showcasing during London Fashion Week with Matches Fashion, how did you create your connections with like luxury retailers from coming from such an underground kind of scene?
I was very lucky in the sense I was supposed so left of centre, and I was, as I say, I was kind of like, hello, and I was so, as I say, I was running this bar called the Bricklayers, and everybody, all the art directors, all the fashion people, all the magazines would come to this pub. So I suppose I was maybe a bit of a celebrity of that moment, that was just there at the time. I was a very lucky person to be doing something different in an empty place called Shoreditch. So I stood out. So my tag stood out, my style stood out, my installation stood out. I was very lucky to be asked to do stuff at Dazed Confused. People in the pub were Katie Grand and Giles Deacon and Luella Bartley, all these kind of like people that were just you at the time, what you are now, just young, we were 20, we were doing our 20s, we were just polarized into this pub, that seemed to be like the scout hut of it all. And I suppose I was just known for doing something so radical and different, because, as I say, the mashup there was nothing like it. I suppose, people now say, I'm the godfather of sports luxe, and that's crazy. But, I still think Noki is beyond sports luxe. I think it's so luxurious because it's up to you what sports brand you want to mash up and then create your version of a sports brand. And I'm not a bootlegger. I do not bootleg off onto brand new textiles. I do not cut up. I do not screen print other people's brands and just stick it on a t-shirt, a Gillan t-shirt. That's not what I do. I use quality branded textiles from the original brand. and I chop those up and I stick them together. So it's a completely different format. It's not bootlegging, it's custom building. There's a different because at the moment the whole you guys are going through this whole kind of like, bootleg this and bootleg that. It's all kind of like the underground kind of like FU, do you know what I mean, to society. But I don't. I have printed on new textiles called dead stock, but I'm not that's not my format. I'm very much a kind of custom builder, CBer. And it's so to get back to your question, I was very lucky, right time, right place. And I'm still misunderstood. So it never really is the right time. You just got to do it for yourself. You've got to make your own luck, in the sense, because I've just been embargoed by a magazine because of one of my Safe Sex and the Rave campaign Adidas pieces. The editor eventually went, no, we can't have that. So as I say, I can be a pioneer of stuff, but at the same time, I can still be embargoed, and my work being shoved onto the editing floor. So it's never, which I quite like. I quite like the fact that my work is still underground. It's not even as much as, we can walk into JD Sports and see a custom built, looky likey jacket, tracksuity thing. There's still aspects of my work which are still unliked, not seen as acceptable to be put into a magazine. So, am I answering your question?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, you are. Thank you.
Yeah. Please, anything else you want to add?
No, I think it's good. What you said, like, about being in the right place at the right time. Do you also, as I say, do you believe it's like, do you still believe in that sense of like, it's who you know, not what you know, or is it kind of a balance of both?
It's what you know and what other people want to get to know. You've got to start to understand what you want people to like about your work. If you don't really know what you're doing, it'll come through. And what I mean by that is, if you are jealous of somebody else's work and you decide to steal somebody else's ideas, and as a designer, and jump on that bandwagon and work harder at the idea because you think the other person's not doing what you think they should be doing with their ideas, be very careful with that, because if it's a really great radical idea, you don't know where you're going to take it to the next level, because that person who's made the jump to do something radical knows what they're doing, will know where to correct themselves and make the next amazing leap of new creative visual content. And if you don't really know where the initial point is, and you're just copying from what you've seen, it can go so far, but you'll end up with severe designer block. I've seen it enough times. I've seen it thousands of times with people jumping on the custom build, trying to do collections, and they don't know where to take it to the next level, how to do it. I support people that go to the rag and custom build. If a designer comes along, takes an idea of mine, or an idea that's come out of the custom build, and turns it into a pattern piece and turns it into a collection, which can look great for one season, I've seen it so many times fail afterwards, because they don't know. They're not custom building. They're just jumping into, they're taking a freedom idea and turning it into a very sludgy, how can I explain it without being too militant, a very negative place of making money. Does that make sense? Oh, great idea, but I can make more money out of that because I can turn it into a pattern and sell it in a small, medium, and large and capture an audience, which is great. But I'm still yet to see those people, and I've seen many of them become anything futuristic, really. So yes, I'm still discovering myself as well. I'm still discovering the potential of the custom build, and where it can go and how it can be evolved. But I definitely think it's futuristic, and I definitely think it's for your generation to encapsulate the next level of intensity of how it will look, because you are now in the situation where the landfill mountains are so high, and our fashion industry is now the second most toxic industry. It's an embarrassment to the world fashion industry. And that's why I'm trying to say the clothing industry has created that. The fashion industry, which is what you want to be as a fashion designer, and be proud of that monocle. I just think I'm here to only promote the custom build. And if you're into pattern cutting, then just get a tracksuit top and cut the pattern piece out the back of it. Use it, and try and engage with the idea that the textiles are quite toxic. Rolls of fabric are toxic, they have toxicity behind them. And the thing you need to make for your ideas, be very careful of what you make it out of. Because even now, I've been in this long enough to know that the organic world isn't necessarily a way forward either, because it's got its own toxicity. And we're now at that level where we've got Greta, and she's a baby kid, embarrassing us all with her protests. Yeah. So she's like, I was thinking about the other day, she's a bit like county line kids that are like so young that they're abused by drug dealers and sent out to the suburbs to deal with to feed the addiction for drugs. That these kids are so feral and underground that there can do things and not be prosecuted for it. That teenagers are scared of these kids. So there's a transferal of dark side going on. And I see the county line kids are like a real legacy of the toxic rave drug scene. And that worries me as well. But what I'm trying to say is that Greta is a similar context. She is coming out as a dyslexic and being very, very, very vocal and brutal about why stuff needs to change. And I think she's feeding probably what you'll notice is your brothers and sisters' minds, certainly my nieces and nephews' minds, with things have to change. And that's why I suppose I'm being a bit militant about the custom build, and what I presented on Matches. I don't know if any of you guys have seen it, but I presented a collection on Matches, and it was everything I did 25 years ago, nothing changed, except for the style had evolved. It become cleaner, more understood, more concise. Hello? Somebody asking?
No, Noki, it's all good. We've got 10 minutes left of you. Do you want to have a look at what people have put on their hands?
Yes.
How do you want to do this? Have you written on your hand?
Well, I'm going to say, to begin with, I've written built-in or premature obsolescence, right? And this came from today. I was watching TV, and the newsreader had changed what used to be called built-in obsolescence to premature obsolescence. And I got really angry because built-in obsolescence is what the modern day designer creates a product to break, but then they were turning on the consumer, and they've now changed it to premature. So they're putting the emphasis on the consumer breaking the product, not the designer causing the break. And that's why I'm talking about this world that we're living in, where words are used to fuck us up, you know what I mean? To swing it around on us, to create fake news. And I just wanted to bring these words. So it's built-in obsolescence. It's not premature. The designer's doing it to us. It's not us as consumers. It's not our fault that that product breaks. It's the designer's fault that that product breaks.
It's like originally it was global warming, and then that was changed to climate change because global warming was like really negative connotation. So they changed it to climate change, which was much softer.
Softer, exactly. And the whole, and I also, there's another one as well, where the AIDS campaign, which is why I'm really militant about that one, was seen as too aggressive, and it's now sex education awareness, because and they promote chlamydia because it's softer and nicer. But the thing is, if you're getting chlamydia, you're barebacking, you're potentially getting AIDS. So
Yeah.
it's either you either realize you're being mollycoddled by words and get a grip and search for the real reasons and be an adult, not just try and be an adult. Yeah.
Amazing. Who has a word they want to show on screen?
Yes.
Louisa Wilkie, have you got a word on your hand?
I do. It
Go
says
on.
adaptable. I
Adaptable,
thought it was
good.
quite
And how
COVID
have you become adaptable?
I think definitely during lockdown it showed. I think I struggled with it at first. Now I feel like I've come through the other light and I've actually realized I have been able to adapt. Maybe not as quicker as I thought I would, but I've kind of found ways to kind of keep my creativity going and get inspiration.
Good. That's that. It's the only way. It's the only way of trying to elevate yourself above the depression that you feel coming down on top, and elevate and adapt around it.
Mm.
You're absolutely right. Well done.
Who's got another word? Ellie,
George.
what have you got? Ellie Harmon.
Mine's,
Come on, Ellie. Hi, Ellie.
Hiya, mine's Muse.
Muse.
See that? Yeah, I feel like it sounds really silly.
Uh-huh.
I would love to get it as a tattoo, but I'm very indecisive, so I probably won't do that. But I'm always like finding inspiration around me, and that's sort of what it means, isn't it? Is that right?
Uh-huh. Very good. Yes,
Yeah.
I love that. That's very, very good.
Come from like, what was it? Earlier I searched it up again to like make sure I knew what it was, but I've already forgotten. Is it like a woman who's also a goddess or something? She's an inspiration? I can't remember.
Yes.
But yeah, that I just like that word and it looks nice. Another word I was going to do was aesthetic. I just love aesthetically pleasing things.
Yes.
But yeah, I could have wrote down loads. Now I'm thinking of loads, but that was my.
I'm definitely in with the aesthetic thing. I get so much buzz out of going secondhand shopping and into the landfills and finding aesthetically pleasing sportswear.
Yeah.
So yes, it's part of, and I've also even gone to the point where be very careful what you hate, you know?
Yeah.
Because there could be a muse in what you hate. Because if you hate it, you're actually a little bit in love with it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because you're so passionate about it.
Yeah, you've had a visceral reaction. So be very careful of what you hate and don't dismiss that feeling.
Yeah.
Because there could be a muse in the hate. Okay.
Yeah, I like that one.
Cool.
George, I'm sure you've got one.
Yeah, mine is essentially, but I wrote it upside down and back to front.
That's fine.
Yeah,
It's all inside out, upside down.
That's me. But yeah,
is your mum there? Is your mum there?
No, no, she's not here.
You're independent now, are you?
I'm an independent George now. Can you believe
Good.
it?
That's good. But she's missing you. And essentially, what have you found essentially during lockdown?
Well, everything is essential. Do you know what I mean? We have the essentials, and then everyone has their own essentials, which aren't actually essentials, but is essential to them. But that's kind of different word, essentially, but also kind of not different. But like, I just think it's just the most powerful word in the world, and I love it.
It's your amazing word, is it? Amazing.
Amazing.
It's your new word, essential. It's a good word. It's a good word. The rag is essential to me. It's essential for the custom build. So it's a very good word. I like it a lot. Essentially, it's all about the rag and the custom build. So yes, I will 100% agree with that. And my eye is on you all.
Oh, love that.
I'm trying to get pictures while you're doing this kind of like, I'm trying to curate all of this and get really great screen grabs of you morphing into something else. Has anyone got another fab word on the back of their hand that you haven't got your cameras on? Come on, we've got 4 minutes left before
I can go longer if you want. I'm cool with going longer.
Any more words on the back of your hand? Okay, any questions about Noki's Instagram, because he asked for you to check that out. So some comments about his Instagram and his practice. Some, and not just questions, some comments. Anything anything to contribute to this lecture?
Anybody is really finding it hard to understand what I'm going to, please speak to me. Please, I like people's visceral reaction that you hate it, that you really don't get it, that you are quite disgusted with what I'm doing. Please, those people I love engaging with that person. Do not hide and be a troll. Come forward and let me know your disgust, if there is anybody. Go and be brave.
How it's like segmented, like it's not all the same on your Instagram. It kind of feels like, I don't know, like different little pockets of who you are, and what you kind of represent.
It is, everything you see is the world that you live in with branding, but it's subverted. And I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just trying to project an idea of what you can do with anything you left in your wardrobe, with anything you find in a second-hand shop. If you go deeper into the rag yards, when it comes off the conveyor belt, you know, it's all created sustainably. And I mean that more to do with how my mind works. One idea spawns another idea, spawns a color. Everything you see, even I look at my Instagram sometimes and I go, oh, look at that selection of reds. You know what I mean? There's a kind of, one day will be a selection of reds, and then it'll move into greens, and then there'll be a kind of like protest, and then there'll be, you know, a really visceral kind of fuck you. Do you know what I mean? I'll go for it because something's really pissed me off, and then I'll go into something really fluffy. And then, like recently, I did you know, there was a shock that happened in my community where a neighbour's kid is really ill. So I sang her happy birthday, wearing, you know, the Noki, full Noki regalia. And, you know, it for me, Instagram is I live quite isolated, but I know that I have a community of some amazing minds. They don't always like stuff. They don't ever support half the time, but I know they're seeing my work. You know, they're flicking through it. And I just love knowing that I'm frying their brains most of the time. They're making, what is he coming up with now? You know, and it's all, and I'm only coming up with it using secondhand garments. You know, it's not brand new stuff. It's not. It's just, you know, sustainably. Like I say, it's a sustainable revolt. You know, or it's sustainably revolting. You know, and it's fun. I would hope when you look at it, it's a fun Instagram. It's subversive and it's fun and it's colourful and it's a celebration of the rag yards. And there's a piece there. Just 2 t-shirts. And originally, when I first started Noki, it was 2 t-shirts sewn together, as you can see here. And it was called the magazine. And the magazine was what I basically wanted to create, a cloth magazine. So I'd stick one brand into another brand, sew it together, fold it in half, so that would become the spine of the magazine. And then this became the magazine, which became the kind of uniform of Noki. And it was basically me trying to create a magazine that emulated the magazine, because the first 60 pages of a magazine are mind warping you to buy crap. So I would try and create a positive magazine, but I didn't even want to call it. I wanted to amalgamate the idea of magazine and zine, and it was called a magazine. So I was trying to elevate the idea of zines, because zines are always seen as like a pat on the head kind of revolt, and it never goes any further than that. And then the magazine takes over and becomes the glossy kind of like mecca for everybody to be kind of like drawn towards, like the flame. So that's kind of why I've called it, you know, the magazine. And it was literally a cloth magazine sewing the 2 branded products together. So that was kind of like the first mashups that I was doing. So obviously it would be a Fila t-shirt and an Adidas t-shirt or a Nike, and that was the kind of like idea. But now, you know, I've gone on to just plain black ones. You know, it's you know, cutting tabs out of other brands, and sometimes they'll pop into, you know, high street stores and remove labels. Maybe I might do, I might not do. And then, go back with a pocket full of branded labels and stitch them into the, you know, into the hemlines of the magazines, and create a kind of, so when somebody walks about wearing that, it's kind of the opposite of everything else that they're living around. It's a living entity that's just starting to come to fruition in a sense, and I want it to be copied. Like I always do when I did Fashionista, my mission statement was, "Don't buy me, copy me," and that was basically a call out to you guys, the youth of today, to be inspired by these things. I'm not a designer, I'm an artist, and I'm trying to say, custom build your own ideas. You know, you can get inspiration from my work, but since 2008, an awful lot of designers have gone on to copy it and turn it into their brand ideas. But it's you know, it's part of a process. You know, I think the pandemic, I think the lockdown has made people reassess a certain conscious feeling within inside them. What is a good unlock? What will be good for the unlock? I think a new generation. I think the skate generation, the kids that are into skating, and part of that graffiti scene and that kind of stuff, they're going to be very powerful again, just because of their acrobatic amazingness. I'm in awe. I mean, I tried skating back in the 80s and decided it was not for me. Bit of body popping, raving, all that kind of other stuff, dancing, that kind of thing. I was more that kind of character. The electro thing really got me. I love doing the sort of body pop style, but BMXing, cycling, I cycle now. I don't drive, so I live a life through a bike, planes, trains, and automobiles. So I'm quite sustainable. I'm not just talking about it. I do. And that's just because I know I can't drive. I would kill. I'd be like putting me in charge of a moving bullet, you know. So just by me being unable to do what everybody else does and realizing it, I cycle everywhere. So it keeps me fit, you know. I'm hitting 50 this year, so I'm kind of you know, as I say, I'm an original raver from 1988, so I've seen it through for many years, and I enjoy creating this world of Noki, which is full of immense potential, because since I started 25 years ago, the landfill mountains have become huge, immense. I mean, now the oceans are polluted, you know. Africa is swamped with rag. You know, it's insane what's happened, you know. Millions of trainers have been produced, you know, hundreds of thousands of tracksuits have been created. Sports luxe has been evolved, you know. Louis Vuitton and Supreme has happened. That's a mashup. That's not as original as it's made out to be. That's a two brands coming together to create a kind of mashup. So I've been there, done it, you know, and I want for you to come out of lockdown looking at the idea of the custom build to be a source of inspiration, even if you just use it as an idea to chop up garments to get new ideas for your collections. You know, just grab some garments, chop into them, and then resew them together. If the armhole's too big for the sleeve hole, pleat it into position and see what weird shapes happen. You know, if you stretch into, you know, warp and weave, the stretch will go into the warp and weave. See what happens. Stretch it to its maximum and stitch it into the warp and weave, which doesn't stretch, and see what amazing shapes come out of it, you know. And I guarantee no fashion, I've come across so many times when I've met the best pattern cuttings of the world, and they've looked at some of my custom builds and they went, whoa, how did you get to that? And they went, I wouldn't have a fucking clue how to pattern cut that until I've seen that. You've blown my mind. So that's great that I blow in a pattern cutter's mind by just finding another way forward with the stuff that's been pattern cut and caused landfill, you know. So there's a flip mode in there. So I everything you're doing, don't be dismissive of chopping up garments. and re-sewing them together. Love an overlocker. Forget sewing machines. Go to the overlocker. Just get it under the overlocker and zip it together, you know? So what sewing machines I gave up ages ago. The only thing I use a sewing machine now to do is to do ruching, the elastic case, sort of like so I can get that effect. I just go straight to the overlocker. I call mine the overlorder. It literally overlords my whole work, you know? It allows it to happen. And because I use mostly sportswear, you know, it's a perfect link for a stretching to happen, you know? So yeah, become good friends with the overlocker. Get yourself one. Don't buy cheap. Save up and get one that's at least 400 quid up. Do not buy a cheap overlocker. You will regret it because it won't work. It will jam up and break and you'll be gutted. So save up. Instead of getting a car, ask mum and dad to buy you a good overlocker. When you can move around, not an industrial, just a semi-industrial overlocker, and get it in a box, and you can move it around. Just start chopping up garments, chopping up your bloody wardrobe. You bought it. You like the colors. You like the textiles. Instead of sitting there dormant in your wardrobe, chop them up and see what you can come out of lockdown with some great outfits. You know, you take 5 of those outfits and you smash them up and you put one to another and just jigsaw them and collage them together. You've got 5 brand new outfits. Whether people like them or not, it's nothing to do with you. You've got to be confident that you are wearing what you liked, what you bought, what you consumed, and now you're unlocking, going, this is my self-expression. I have dealt with something that the 20th century gave me, which was consumerism and the need and the want and the desire, the celebrity, and you've come out the other side with fresh thinking. Because there's nothing better than somebody complimenting something you've made. You get such a buzz and you want to go back in and chop everybody's wardrobes up, you know? And therefore you've created sustainability and you've chopped up nostalgia. And fashion does not and should never deal with nostalgia. Vintage is a poison within fashion because it's just nostalgia. It's not modern, it's not design, it's just re-augmenting the past and pushing it. And that's what a lot of the clothing industry does, is just looks at what's trendy, flicks through a secondhand rail, gets a cool hunter to go around with a secondhand budget, take back garments and they just rip them off, you know, make them in cheaper fabrics. So all this stuff goes on, and this is your world. And some of you guys will want to become clothing designers, but I want to only speak to the fashion designers, not the clothing designers. And maybe only one of you I'm really talking to, and I look forward to you inspiring me in the future.
Noki, can I ask the final question so we can wrap up? I know you just worked with Catherine Hamnett, which you were wearing right at the beginning of this lecture.
Oh, yes.
If you could collaborate with someone, anyone, and maybe not necessarily just in fashion or clothing, who would you love to collaborate with?
Well, he's dead now, but I'd love to collaborate with Lucio Fontana. He's an artist. But in the 21st century, I'd love to collaborate with Patagonia. Because what I've done with Pat and Hamnett, Patagonia are the next level of sports endeavor. Whereas Catherine Hamnett was sports fashion, I think Patagonia are sports endeavor. I'd love to play in that arena with their dead stock and their overproduction to create an upfusion.
How are you going to make that happen?
Well, I've said it, so maybe it'll happen. I don't know. It may or may not happen, but it makes sense for me to do an upfusion with their dead stock, because every company now, because that was why I worked with Catherine, because she came to me with bravado that she realized she had dead stock and it was building up, and it was a problem within her remit of sustainability, which is pretty gold standard. She admitted that she had a problem within her own production, that there was And a lot of companies don't admit to that at all. They'd rather burn it, which is now what Barbary are being pulled up for, you know, and that dead stock thing. So instead of the burning thing, they're now having to find ways of pushing it into universities and find things. But when it comes down to it, any company would be perfect for an upfusion, you know. I know what I'm doing. I've done many years in the field. I have a certain style, and it always comes down to style. And Noki is a specific style. It has a look. It has a direction. And that's what fashion is: style and direction. So it all depends what company is brave enough to want the real mashup to happen, because it's going to happen. It just depends which big brave company is brave enough to maybe put aside their art director and let me art direct. That'd be fun. Even if it was a brand new department, you know. Just I ultimately would love to open up my own school, that taught pure custom building, because I have a ridiculous repertoire of how to look at a garment, and that fine art detail I want to pass on to students so that they can focus and refine and then refine again, and really take shapes and forms that I've done in the custom build to the next level. Because I can only do, I personally can only do so much. As I say, I'm coming up to 50. I give up maybe another 20 years of trying to make it work, trying to push it forward. But if I could get a school together where I could have connections with industry, with rag, rails, where I could teach students to make the magazine, create the mask, do all these things, you know, the sleeve pocket, stuff I do there, you know, all these techniques that I have that are still the garment. I'm not chopping up the garment as such. I'm not pattern cutting out of it. I'm using the whole garment as the actual pattern piece. Yeah, to be able to do that, I think that would leave this earth quite happy that a school had my DNA as part of a structure that I think could go and compete with fashion industry during fashion weeks. And that would be great to be able to, and I think it could feed, and I know as well that it would have its own, it would circular economy itself, because it's samples that we would make through the creative process would be pieces to consume from. So, you know, slowly but surely, there's a limit to modernity sometimes within our concept of the world wanting modernity, you know. So I'm just waiting, biding my time. You know, I've done NokiShop.com recently, where it's all my portfolios on it. And Noki Shop is a kind of gateway to the school in a sense. I just basically wanted a platform so I could be in my studio and I could custom build pieces and then put them on Noki Shop as a kind of like, here's what I made today kind of stuff. I wanted to finish a garment today, but I was so busy to bring to you guys. So I brought this one instead. But the piece I wanted to bring to you was this great Fontana. So from Louisa, do I do workshops? I'd love to do more workshops, yes. Custom build workshops, I think are my future, I think, but it's got to be pure custom build. I've done custom build before, but unfortunately students sometimes don't take it seriously and they don't bring in garments, and they're on their phone too many times and they're really not engaged, and then they drift off and they not really feel it's part, and I'm just like, it gets a bit frustrating sometimes, but that's just a process. I think I mean, what can I say? I'm addicted to my phone. I'm very distracted sometimes as well, and I'm very focused. But so it's a process, and who can say what the future is going to come and how it's going to come. I just know that, as I say, it's sustained me for 25 years, and I think, you know, the custom build is definitely an unlock situation. So yes, I do workshops. I need to do more, but they need to be more high profile, and they need to be more structured. Now I'm waiting maybe for the university to come along to actually bite the bullet and go, right, we need a custom build department, you know, that is taking sustainability at the gold level standard, not on the organic t-shirt level.
Yeah.
That would be great fun. I mean, an MA would be great, so you could really like go to the next level of higher thinking. It's just, I think I just would like to lock down my techniques as process, because there is only so much you can do to a garment without turning it into drag through a bush backwards, where it becomes a messy kind of, like we call it, like, you know, slasher movie look, you know, and it's a bit desperate and a bit dirty and a bit ill-considered, you know. I've worked hard at considering my moves when I custom build, and those considered moves I would like to lock down as a kind of process, just like the pattern cutter has a process, just like the designer has a process, the photographer has a process, all these sort of aspects within fashion. I suppose I'm trying to say is I would like to engage my students in the craft of collage and art and Dadaism, pop art, those kind of things. And I'm going back to that word muse, is creating the art muse, you know, that wears the art apparel, you know, and it's like going back to the fashion industry having a higher thinking. Some may have called it pretentious, but somewhere along the line, it needs to elevate, not be dumbed down by fast fashion, fast clothing, you know, because that's where the fashion industry is unfortunately being eroded, is that they're becoming really too important. And that's fine. But as long as you're, as you say, when you're aware, you can repair, but when you're unaware, you know, the fashion industry lives in despair, you know.
Noki, thank you so much. I want to go and cut up a couple of old Adidas jackets and put different coloured sleeves on now.
Yes.
Thank you so much. That was just brilliant. And I think you should do school and you should do workshops. And I think every student should go to a rag centre. It will make you cry at the amount of clothing that is just being bundled into the, you know, off to Africa. So your vision is just phenomenal, and it's so established, and just has. I just think your turn and your time now, especially after this lockdown, you know, working with brands should just kind of get your knowledge, that incredible knowledge, and just capitalize on your passion that you just continue to kind of, you know, drive forward.
Well, it made me happy, but when I was in the mashup back in the 90s, I was unhappy. I'd seen toxicity king in. As soon as I started doing the mashup and making new freedom uniforms and ideas and engaging with art and philosophy, and it just made me happy. So I just would like to, you know, prolong that happiness and turn it into a philosophy that a school can engage with and produce custom build design directive students that are quite happy to build their own web shop and sell their custom built pieces on it, you know, for a new community, you know, battle collage community, you know, that goes to its own raves, parties in its own backyard. Because the rave is going to be a very interesting space now with pandemic, because if there's going to be any levels of mutated COVID, it's going to be in a rave.
Mm.
It's going to be in a sauna. It's going to be in a back room, you know.
Yeah.
It's like there's all these things, these sweaty kind of like human places are, you know, places, the incubation places for any pandemic to re-emerge its ugly head again. So it's an important place to try and understand that life is not the same on Unlock. It will not go back. It will go back to, it has to go back to something, or has to go forward into something that fits the scary levels of a virus, you know, that is way beyond AIDS in a sense, because, you know, it's not just, you know, when it first came out, not just gay men getting it, you know what I mean? It's like every heterosexual person in the world now is getting it. So it's a killer, and it's important to be aware of that and be ready for change as quick as it happens, because if a lockdown kicks in again, back into your bedroom again, you know. So it's going to be hopefully not, you know, but it's I don't, you know, it's so I just think, you know, the custom build is a positive thing. If you ended up running back, you know, I've always said Noki was a bit like Bunker Love, and I was a bit in that mindset when I was in the 90s. I was like, oh my God, this is just going mental out here in Shoreditch. You know, it's going absolutely. And then GABA kicked in. The GABA movement kicked in the 90s, you know, which was the horrible end of rave. And GABA, the flashing, you know, strobe light and just the repetitive mental bouncing beats of just horrible white noise utopia. Do you know what I mean? It was horrendous. And heroin and crack kicked in, and it was just people sitting deathly at the edge of dance floors. And I was spotting all this stuff in Shoreditch, and I was like, oh, horrendous scene. I was like, well, what's this? Oh, it's GABA, it's fucking brilliant. I went, it's fucking shit. Do you know what I mean? And that kind of inspired me more to take the rave and be positive about the rave. If that's where it gone to GABA, I was like, right, I'm creating Noki. That's kind of another reason. I sometimes never talk about the GABA thing, because GABA is a specific kind of rave music that sort of became the toxic end of rave. I have so many funny arguments with ravers going, oh, GABA was brilliant, but only for those that did too many E's, do you know what I mean? And then got into heroin and smack and crack, do you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, okay. So yeah, I kind of understood why they liked it, you know what I mean? Because it just fitted that generational thing. It's a bit like, you know, the generation that are into, you know, should we say, just the new forms of sniffing certain drugs that are clogging up lungs and livers and all that kind of stuff, because it's super cheap. So yeah, the custom build is my only creative endeavor, force, inspiration, modernity, life unlock, textile, landfill drop. That's what I say, not landfill up.
Amazing. Guys, can everyone say thank you to Noki? Either do a little clap emoji or a real emoji. Like amazing, a real emoji, a real clap, I meant to say. Amazing, amazing, amazing. Noki, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I've got so many screen grabs of you changing your outfit. I'm just going to stop recording.
Thank you very much.